Miss Ocasio-Cortez, I must offer my apologies for intruding upon your testimony. However, I possess a rather straightforward inquiry that my constituents back home in Louisiana frequently pose to me regarding this Green New Deal you are championing. What is the specific financial cost? Senator John Kennedy's unhurried, distinctively Southern drawl sliced through Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's passionate testimony with the ease of a table knife gliding through warm cornbread. The Senate Budget Committee hearing room fell into a sudden, heavy silence. AOC had been in the very midst of a sentence, building toward a rhetorical crescendo concerning the existential crisis of climate change and the moral imperative to take action, when the senior senator from Louisiana politely but firmly interrupted her flow. AOC looked toward Kennedy with an expression of irritation that was barely concealed beneath her professional demeanor. She had been testifying for nearly 20 minutes, delivering a speech meticulously crafted by her team to strike every emotional chord regarding future generations and planetary survival. The Democrats, seated on the committee, had been nodding in agreement, while MSNBC broadcast the proceedings live to the nation. She was generating clips for social media in real time. And now, this Southern senator, who spoke with the mannerisms of a country lawyer, was inquiring about money. "Senator, this issue is not merely about cost," she retorted, her voice carrying that distinct blend of fervor and slight condescension that had contributed to her fame. "This is about whether we possess a moral obligation to future generations." "I comprehend morality, ma'am," Kennedy replied with a gentle touch, his folksy tone never wavering for a moment. "I am a Christian, I attend church, I read my Bible, and I attempt to be a good person. However, I am also a member of the Senate Budget Committee, which implies that I must consider financial matters, so I will ask once again, how much does your Green New Deal cost?" AOC shifted uncomfortably in her seat at the witness table, realizing that this exchange was not proceeding according to plan. "Senator, estimates vary depending on the implementation," she hedged. "I am not inquiring about estimates from other people. I am asking you," Kennedy pressed. "You wrote this proposal, you introduced it, and you are here advocating for it. Surely you possess some idea regarding what it costs." The cameras captured AOC's face cycling through a spectrum of emotions, annoyance, confusion as to why he was fixating on this calculation, and mental processing on how to pivot away. "That is not how legislation works, Senator. We outline goals, and—" Kennedy interrupted. "So you are asking the United States government to spend money, taxpayer money, yet you do not know the amount?" Kennedy's tone remained polite, almost apologetic. "Is that what you are telling this committee?" AOC realized she had been maneuvered into a rhetorical corner. If she admitted she did not know the cost, she would appear unprepared. Yet if she provided the real number, it would sound absurd. She attempted a different approach. "The cost of inaction is far greater than—" "Ma'am, with respect, that is not an answer," Kennedy stated as he retrieved a document. "The American Action Forum conducted a study in which they estimated your Green New Deal would cost $93 trillion over 10 years. That is $9.3 trillion per year. Our entire federal budget is approximately $6 trillion. Does that number sound accurate to you?" AOC's jaw tightened visibly. "Those are conservative estimates designed to make the plan sound unrealistic," she countered. "So you do possess a number. What is it?" Kennedy asked. "I am not going to engage with bad faith Republican talking points," she deflected. Kennedy looked genuinely hurt by the accusation. "Ma'am, I promise you I am not asking in bad faith. I am asking because I represent the people of Louisiana. They work hard, they pay taxes, some of them work on oil rigs, some farm, some run small businesses, and they want to know how much of their hard-earned money you wish to spend on this plan. That seems like a reasonable question. The silence stretched out painfully. AOC could not provide a number because every serious analysis placed the cost somewhere between astronomical and impossible. But she also could not refuse to answer without appearing evasive. Kennedy waited patiently, his expression one of genuine curiosity, looking for all the world like a simple country lawyer trying to understand a complicated issue. However, everyone in that room who knew John Kennedy's background, Yale Law School, Oxford University, former Louisiana State Treasurer, knew exactly what he was doing. He was dismantling her position with the one question she could not answer. "Let me offer some assistance," Kennedy said kindly. $93 trillion. That figure exceeds 4 times our entire gross domestic product. That is more money than exists in America. So, my question is simple. How do we pay for it? AOC looked at the Democratic senators on the committee for assistance, but they were suddenly very interested in their notes. They knew what was coming. Kennedy had just set a trap that was about to snap shut on the most famous progressive in America. And it was all transpiring live on C-SPAN. 8 hours earlier, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had been in her Capitol Hill office reviewing her testimony with her chief of staff. Feeling good and confident, this was her moment to shine on a national stage, to defend the Green New Deal before the Senate, and to show America that progressive policies had serious support. "This is perfect," her chief of staff said while reviewing the prepared remarks, noting they were passionate, personal, and policy-focused. "You are going to dominate?" AOC nodded, reading through her testimony one more time. She had hit all the key points: the climate crisis, job creation, the moral imperative, and the vision of a better future. It was inspirational, viral-ready. The kind of testimony that would be clipped and shared millions of times. "The Republicans will probably try to attack you," her communications director noted, "but you are great at handling that. Just stay on message. Make it about them being climate deniers and protecting fossil fuel companies." "What about Senator Kennedy?" someone asked. "He is on the committee." AOC waved dismissively. "The guy who talks like Foghorn Leghorn? Let him try. I will make him look like he is stuck in the past, while I am fighting for the future." Her team laughed. They had seen AOC handle Republicans before, with viral retorts and righteous indignation, making them look out of touch. Kennedy would be no different, just another old white Southern senator who did not understand the urgency of climate change. What AOC did not know, and could not have imagined, was that at that exact moment, 3 floors below in a secure conference room, Senator John Kennedy was reviewing a very different kind of preparation. Kennedy sat at a table covered with research documents, economic analyses, and detailed breakdowns of every claim in the Green New Deal. His legislative aide had spent 3 weeks compiling everything, not attack talking points, just questions. Simple, straightforward questions about AOC's own proposal. "Walk me through the strategy one more time," Kennedy said, his Louisiana accent somehow thicker when he was working than when he was on camera. His chief of staff pulled up the outline. "We let her give her testimony. Don't interrupt. Let her do the whole emotional appeal. Then you start with the most basic question, how much does it cost? And if she pivots to talking about morality or urgency," Kennedy asked, "bring it back to the question politely," the aide instructed. "You are just a simple senator trying to understand. How much does it cost? And where does the money come from?" "It is not an attack. It is basic due diligence." Kennedy nodded. He had used this approach before. Don't attack the person. Don't question their motives. Just ask them to explain their own proposals in concrete terms and watch them fall apart when they realize they cannot. "What about the $93 trillion estimate?" Kennedy asked. That is from the American Action Forum. It is a conservative think tank, so she will try to dismiss it. But we have three other independent analyses. They all range from 65 trillion to over 100 trillion. The exact number does not matter. What matters is that it is astronomical, and she has no funding plan. Kennedy reviewed the other questions in his binder. The Amazon headquarters deal, her luxury apartment, the Met Gala, her campaign paying her boyfriend's company, each one a simple, factual question that revealed hypocrisy between her rhetoric and her reality. The key is tone, Kennedy reminded himself. Never hostile, always curious, just trying to understand. Make her condescension obvious by staying humble. His legislative director added one more note. She is going to try to make this about you being old, white, Southern, and out of touch. Don't take the bait. Keep it about her proposals, about the math, about basic logic. I do not need to attack her, Kennedy said. Her own policies will do that for me. At 2 p.m., the Senate Budget Committee hearing began. Chairman Sheldon Whitehouse gavelled in. Today, we are examining proposals for addressing climate change and economic transformation. We are pleased to have Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as our witness. Given her leadership on the Green New Deal, AOC took her seat at the witness table, adjusted her microphone, and smiled at the cameras. She looked the part. Professional, passionate, and ready to make history. Representative Ocasio-Cortez, you have the floor for opening testimony. AOC launched into her prepared remarks, and for 20 minutes she was in her element, talking about the climate crisis, about the millions of jobs the Green New Deal would create, about the moral obligation to future generations, and about how America could lead the world in fighting climate change while building a more just economy. Her voice rose and fell with practiced emotion as she cited statistics about extreme weather, talked about communities suffering from pollution, and painted a vision of a green, prosperous future where everyone had good jobs, clean air, and affordable housing. The Democratic senators nodded along, and Senator Whitehouse smiled appreciatively. This was good television, passionate, inspiring, the kind of testimony that would dominate the news cycle. Then she finished and looked up expectantly, ready for the softball questions from Democrats and the attacks from Republicans that she had prepared to swat down. Senator Whitehouse thanked her and recognized Senator Kennedy for questions, and that is when everything started to go wrong. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman," Kennedy said in his slow drawl, "and thank you, Representative Ocasio-Cortez, for that passionate testimony. You clearly care deeply about this issue." AOC smiled. This was a good start with compliments. Then she expected he would pivot, but instead, he said, "But I have to confess, I am a little confused, and I am hoping you can help me understand." AOC's smile stayed in place, but her eyes narrowed slightly. Where was this going? You talked for 20 minutes about all the wonderful things the Green New Deal would do, and I believe you are sincere. But you did not mention how much it costs, and I am on the Budget Committee, so I have to think about money. How much does your plan cost? AOC had prepared for attacks on the Green New Deal being too radical, too socialist, or too disruptive to the economy, but she had not prepared for this, for someone just asking her to put a price tag on it. "Senator, this isn't about cost," she began, and Kennedy interrupted with his simple question that she could not answer. The question that would dominate the next hour. The question that would go viral for all the wrong reasons. How much does it cost? After the initial exchange, after AOC had tried and failed to avoid giving a number, Kennedy settled into his questioning style. Polite, curious, and relentless. "Let me make sure I understand," he said, looking at his notes like he was just trying to keep the facts straight. The American Action Forum says 93 trillion. You say that is a conservative estimate, so the real number is higher. AOC tried to regain control. Senator, multiple analyses have shown. I am not asking about multiple analyses. I am asking about your analysis. You proposed this. What is your number? The Green New Deal is a framework, not specific legislation, so it is just ideas, not a real plan. Kennedy looked genuinely confused. Because you are asking us to support it, to vote for it, to tell our constituents we are going to do this, it seems like we should know what it costs. AOC's communications training kicked in. Pivot to values. Senator, we cannot put a price tag on saving the planet. Sure we can, Kennedy said reasonably. Everything costs something. I bought a new truck last year. It cost me $42,000. I knew that before I bought it. It seems like before we commit to the biggest government program in history, we should know the price. He pulled out the American Action Forum study. Let me walk through their math, and you tell me what they got wrong. They say retrofitting every building in America costs $5.4 trillion. Is that wrong? AOC did not know. She had never looked at the actual cost breakdowns. I would have to see their methodology. I have it right here, Kennedy said, holding up the report. Very detailed. They show the number of buildings, average retrofit costs, union labor rates. The math seems sound to me, but you are the expert. What is wrong with it? AOC realized she was trapped. She could not challenge the methodology because she did not know it. I am not going to defend Republican talking points. It is not a talking point, ma'am. It is arithmetic. $5.4 trillion to retrofit buildings. Then you want to replace all fossil fuels. They estimate that at $29 trillion. Seems high to me too, but that is replacing all coal, natural gas, and oil with wind, solar, and nuclear, plus the transmission infrastructure, plus storage. Again, where is the math wrong? AOC tried condescension. Senator, perhaps if you understood the economics of renewable energy, I understand economics just fine, Kennedy said mildly. I was Louisiana State Treasurer, managed a $30 billion budget, and never spent money I did not have. So help me understand. Where do we get $93 trillion? He pulled out a simple chart. Total wealth of all American billionaires is about $4 trillion. If we confiscated every penny, which I know you are not proposing, but just as a thought experiment that funds your plan for about 6 months, then what? AOC shifted in her seat. This was not going how she had expected. We are proposing progressive taxation. Okay. You want a 70% marginal tax rate on income over $10 million, correct? A marginal rate. That is 70%. How much revenue does that raise annually? Various estimates say about $72 billion per year, according to the Tax Policy Center. Your plan costs $9 trillion per year. You are 99% short. Where does the rest come from? Middle-class taxes? This was the question AOC could not answer, because the math did not work. To raise $9 trillion annually, you would need to tax everyone, including the middle class, at rates approaching European levels 50, 60, or 70% of income. But she could not say that, because it would kill the proposal. We can fund this the same way we funded tax cuts for billionaires. Kennedy looked confused. Ma'am, tax cuts do not cost money. That is letting people keep their own money. You can disagree with that policy, but it is different from spending. You want to spend $93 trillion in new money? Where does it come from? AOC tried another pivot. Modern monetary theory suggests that sovereign currency issuers, oh Lord, we are doing MMT now. Kennedy looked pained. Ma'am? I may sound like a simple country lawyer, but I went to Yale Law School and Oxford University. I understand monetary policy. You cannot print $90 trillion without catastrophic inflation. Zimbabwe tried that. Venezuela tried that. Weimar Germany tried that. It does not work. He leaned forward slightly. Let me ask you directly. Do you believe we can print $90 trillion without destroying the dollar? AOC knew the answer was no. Any economist would say no. But admitting it meant admitting her plan was unworkable. The Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve says MMT is nonsense. Jerome Powell said it explicitly. So does every mainstream economist. You have a degree in economics from Boston University. You learned this. Why are you pretending it works? The room was silent. AOC had no answer. Kennedy had systematically dismantled the financial foundation of her signature proposal with simple questions and basic math. Senator Whitehouse tried to help. Senator Kennedy, I think we are getting into the weeds. Mr. Chairman, this is the Budget Committee. The weeds are our job. If Representative Ocasio-Cortez is proposing a $93 trillion program, we need to know how it is funded. That is not partisan. That is basic fiscal responsibility. He turned back to AOC. Let me try one more approach. If we cannot tax our way to $93 trillion and we cannot print it, where does it come from? Borrowing? AOC grasped at this. Government investment in infrastructure has historically, ma'am, our national debt is $34 trillion. You want to add $93 trillion more. That is $127 trillion in total debt. Our GDP is $23 trillion. That is a debt-to-GDP ratio of over 500%. Greece collapsed at 180%. How do we survive that? There was no answer, because there was no answer. The plan was economically impossible, and everyone in the room knew it. Kennedy sat back. I am not trying to be difficult. I genuinely want to understand how this works. But every time I ask about money, you talk about morality. Those are both important things, but you cannot have good morals if you bankrupt the country. That does not help anyone. Kennedy shifted topics, giving AOC a chance to recover. But his next question was just as devastating. Let's talk about jobs. Since you mentioned the Green New Deal would create millions of jobs. You opposed Amazon building their headquarters in New York, correct? AOC straightened. This was familiar territory. She had defended this decision many times. I opposed giving $3 billion in corporate welfare to one of the richest companies in the world. Let me make sure I understand the facts, Kennedy said, pulling out news reports. Amazon was going to build a headquarters in Long Island City. 25,000 jobs. Average salary of $150,000. They would pay about $27 billion in taxes over 25 years. New York offered $3 billion in tax incentives. Net tax revenue $24 billion. Is that correct? Those numbers do not account for. Is it correct? $27 billion in taxes minus $3 billion in incentives equals $24 billion net revenue. Technically, and 25,000 jobs at an average of 150,000 equals $3.7 billion in annual wages for New York workers. Do I have that right? AOC could see where this was going. Senator, those jobs would have displaced existing communities. So you opposed 25,000 high-paying jobs, $24 billion in tax revenue, and billions in local economic activity, and you call yourself a jobs advocate? Those weren't real jobs. They were. They were real jobs. Software engineers, managers, support staff, real people with real paychecks, and you ran them off. Kennedy's folksy tone had an edge now. In Louisiana, we would kill to have Amazon build a headquarters. We would roll out the red carpet. but you protested until they left. Now, New York has nothing. How is that good for your constituents? AOC tried to explain. The $3 billion could have been spent on our communities. No, it could not. Kennedy looked genuinely frustrated now. Those were tax incentives, future tax breaks on taxes Amazon would pay. You did not have $3 billion sitting around. Now you do not have the $3 billion in incentives, and you do not have the $27 billion in taxes. You lost both. He pulled out basic math on a piece of paper. Let me show you. Before Amazon, 0 revenue, 0 jobs. After Amazon under the deal, $24 billion revenue net, 25,000 jobs. After Amazon left, because of your protests, 0 revenue, 0 jobs. Which scenario is better for working people? AOC's face was flushed. This is typical Republican simplification. It is arithmetic, addition, and subtraction. You had a deal that would bring billions to New York, and you killed it. Then you celebrated like you had won. Kennedy looked at her with something close to pity. Do you understand how jobs work? How tax revenue works? Did they teach you this at Boston University? The shot at her economics degree landed. AOC had graduated with honors, but was demonstrating a fundamental misunderstanding of basic economic concepts. Senator, with all due respect. Ma'am, I am giving you all the respect I can. I am asking you to explain decisions that affected tens of thousands of working people. You claim to represent the working class, but you cost them jobs. Help me understand how that makes sense. AOC had no good answer. The Amazon deal had been widely criticized even by Democrats. She had won a symbolic victory and cost New York billions in revenue and thousands of jobs. Kennedy was making that crystal clear. He moved on. Let's talk about your lifestyle. You speak often about being from the Bronx, a working-class background, fighting for regular people. But you live in a luxury apartment building in Washington, D.C. that costs $4,000 a month. You wear designer clothes to events. You attended the Met Gala where tickets cost $35,000. How do you reconcile that with your working-class message? AOC bristled. I was invited to the Met Gala as a representative of New York. You wore a dress that said, "Tax the rich," to a $35,000 gala attended by millionaires and billionaires. Do you see the irony? I was making a statement about inequality. You were the inequality. Kennedy's voice rose slightly. You were at an event that costs more than most Americans make in a year, wearing a political slogan like, "It is performance art." If you want to tax the rich, why are you partying with them? AOC tried to pivot to sexism. This is typical Republican attacking successful women. I am not attacking you for being successful. I am pointing out that your lifestyle contradicts your message. You live in luxury while claiming to represent the struggling working class. You attend elite events while denouncing the elite. You cannot be both the voice of the people and a member of the celebrity class. He pulled out photos. AOC, at the Met Gala in her designer Tax the Rich dress. AOC at expensive restaurants in D.C. AOC's luxury apartment building. These are not attacks. These are facts. You present yourself as a regular person, but you live nothing like the people you claim to represent. A real working-class person from the Bronx cannot afford a $4,000 a month apartment and designer gowns. You are playing a role, and voters see through it. Kennedy moved to what he had been building toward, exposing that despite her economics degree, AOC did not understand basic economic principles. You have a degree in economics from Boston University, correct? Yes. So you understand concepts like inflation, monetary policy, supply and demand, opportunity cost? Of course I do. Good. Then explain to me. If we print $9 trillion per year, to fund the Green New Deal. What happens to inflation? AOC fell back on her talking points. Modern monetary theory suggests that inflation only occurs when you exceed productive capacity. MMT is not mainstream economics, Kennedy interrupted. It is a fringe theory that almost no serious economists accept. Paul Krugman, who is very liberal, called it nonsense. What did they teach you at BU about printing money? Monetary policy is more complex than. It is not complex. It is supply and demand. You increase the money supply, chasing the same amount of goods and services. Prices go up. That is inflation. Basic economics. Did you learn that or not? AOC shifted uncomfortably. You are oversimplifying. I am not. I am asking if you understand that printing massive amounts of money causes inflation. Yes or no? Silence. Let me try another one. If you raise the minimum wage to $25 an hour nationally, what happens to small businesses that cannot afford to pay that? They should pay a living wage. But what if they cannot? What if a small restaurant in the Bronx operates on thin margins and cannot afford $25 an hour for waitstaff? What happens to that business? If they cannot pay workers fairly, they shouldn't be in business. So you would rather have people unemployed than employed at lower wages? You would rather kill small businesses than accept that there might be trade-offs to your policies? Kennedy pulled out economic studies. The Congressional Budget Office studied a $15 minimum wage. They found it would lift some workers out of poverty, but cost 1.4 million jobs. Your $25 proposal would cost millions more jobs. Those are real people losing real work. How is that helping them? Workers deserve jobs. You cannot pay rent with moral superiority. If businesses close or stop hiring because wages are too high, workers get nothing. He was passionate now, his folksy demeanor cracking to show genuine frustration. Do you understand that economics is about trade-offs? That every policy has costs and benefits? That good intentions do not guarantee good outcomes? AOC tried to respond, but Kennedy kept going. Let me walk through your platform. You want Medicare for all. Estimated cost $32 trillion over 10 years. You want free college, $2 trillion. You want to cancel student debt, $1.6 trillion. You want universal basic income. Some Democrats propose $3 trillion per year. You want the Green New Deal, $93 trillion. You want all of this simultaneously. Have you done the math on what this costs? He wrote numbers on a chart visible to the cameras. Total cost, over 10 years, approximately $130 trillion. Our entire GDP over 10 years will be about $250 trillion. You want to spend half of all economic activity on government programs. Do you understand that is impossible? AOC's voice rose. Other countries provide these services. Other countries have VAT taxes that hit everyone. They have 50% income taxes on the middle class. They have much smaller militaries because we protect them, and none of them are proposing anything close to this scale. Even Denmark's Prime Minister told Bernie Sanders to stop calling them socialist. Kennedy pulled out quotes from European leaders. The Swedish finance minister, "We are not socialist. We are a market economy with a large welfare state." The Norwegian Prime Minister, "We are capitalists with strong social programs." They are explicitly saying they are not what you think they are, and even they could not afford your proposals. Their programs cost maybe 35% of GDP. Yours would cost over 50%. The math does not work in Europe, and it sure does not work in America. AOC tried to interrupt, but Kennedy was on a roll. Here is what I think is happening. I think you have good intentions. I genuinely believe you want to help people, but I do not think you have thought through the economics. I think you are proposing things that sound good without considering whether they are possible. And that is not leadership. That is fantasy. AOC had been composed for the first hour, frustrated. Yes. Defensive, certainly. But composed. Now, after 90 minutes of systematic dismantling, she was losing it. Senator Kennedy, with all due respect, you are playing games with numbers while the planet is literally burning. We have 12 years to. Where did 12 years come from? Kennedy interrupted. AOC blinked. What? 12 years? You have said it multiple times. We have 12 years to save the planet. Where did that number come from? The IPCC report said. The IPCC report said we need to halve emissions by 2030 to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. That is not the same as 12 years until doomsday. You are exaggerating to create panic. Scientists agree that climate change is an existential threat. Scientists agree climate change is real, and humans contribute to it. They do not agree we have 12 years until the apocalypse, and they certainly do not agree that your $93 trillion plan is the only solution. You are using fear to push policy you cannot defend economically. AOC's voice cracked slightly. This is exactly why people hate Washington. Republicans care more about money than saving lives. I care about both. Kennedy's voice rose to match hers. I care about the environment. I want clean air and water for my grandchildren. But I also care about not bankrupting America. Those things are not contradictory. He stood up, something senators rarely did during hearings. You keep acting like anyone who questions your plan does not care about climate. That is not true. We just think there might be better ways to address it that do not cost more than 4 times our GDP. Like what? AOC challenged. What is your plan? Nuclear power, Kennedy said immediately. France gets 70% of electricity from nuclear. 0 emissions, reliable. We could do the same. But your Green New Deal does not mention nuclear. Why? Nuclear has waste issues. So does solar. Solar panels are full of toxic materials. Wind turbines kill birds and use rare earth minerals from China. Everything has trade-offs. But nuclear is the only proven technology that provides reliable, zero-emission, baseload power. Why isn't it in your plan? AOC did not have a good answer. The Green New Deal is technology neutral. It is not. It specifically focuses on renewables. You are excluding the one technology that could actually solve the problem because your progressive base does not like it. That is not science. That is politics. The hearing room was tense now. This had gone from a policy discussion to a confrontation. Senator Whitehouse tried to intervene. I think we are getting heated. Perhaps we should. I am not heated, Kennedy said, sitting back down but maintaining intensity. I am frustrated because we have a witness who has proposed the most expensive government program in history, cannot tell us what it costs, cannot explain how to pay for it, and gets offended when we ask basic questions. That is not how this is supposed to work. He looked directly at AOC. Let me ask you one final question, Representative Ocasio-Cortez, and I want an honest answer. Do you actually believe the Green New Deal as written is feasible? Or is it just a messaging document? The room went silent. This was the question that mattered. AOC knew the truth. The Green New Deal had never been meant as real legislation. It was a resolution, a statement of values, a way to move the Overton window. But she could not say that without admitting it was performative. I believe we need bold, transformative action. That is not what I asked. Do you believe we can actually retrofit every building in America? Replace all fossil fuels? Guarantee jobs for everyone who wants them? And provide free health care and education? Do you genuinely believe that is possible? A long pause ensued. AOC was trapped. If she said yes, she looked delusional. If she said no, she admitted her signature proposal was fantasy. I believe we have to try. That is not good enough. Kennedy's voice was sharp now. You are asking us to spend $93 trillion on something you are not even sure will work. You cannot explain how to pay for it. You cannot defend the economics. And when questioned, you fall back on, we have to try. He gathered his papers. Ma'am, I do not doubt your passion. I do not question your sincerity. But passion isn't policy. Good intentions aren't a plan. And we cannot spend $93 trillion on, we have to try. The people who elected you might accept that, but the Senate Budget Committee deals with arithmetic. And your arithmetic does not work. Your economics do not work. Your plan does not work. Maybe someday you will come back with a real proposal, with real costs, with real funding mechanisms, with real consideration of trade-offs. But until then, this Green New Deal is just a very expensive wish list, and we cannot base national policy on wishes. Kennedy yielded his time. The hearing wrapped up shortly after, with AOC giving brief answers to a few more questions from Democrats trying to help her recover. But the damage was done. The clips were already going viral. Kennedy asking, "How much does it cost?" and AOC unable to answer. Kennedy explaining basic economics while AOC floundered. Kennedy dismantling the Green New Deal with simple arithmetic. As the hearing adjourned, AOC walked out past reporters, shouting questions. Representative, can you respond to Senator Kennedy's cost estimates? Do you have a funding plan for the Green New Deal? Can you explain the economic basis for your proposals? She did not stop, could not stop. She had no answers that would help. In her office an hour later, her staff tried to spin it. We will focus on his disrespect, on him mansplaining, on him being a climate denier. But they all knew the truth. Kennedy had not been disrespectful. He had explained things clearly and patiently, and had never denied climate change. He had just questioned her solution. He had destroyed her with questions, simple, reasonable questions about her own proposal that she could not answer. Within 2 hours, Kennedy destroys AOC was trending #1 on Twitter. The clip of him asking, "How much does it cost?" had 5 million views. By morning, it would have 50 million, not just from right-wing accounts spinning it, but from everyone, people across the political spectrum, watching AOC unable to answer basic questions about her signature policy. Liberal journalists tried to defend her, claiming Kennedy was being unfair by asking for specifics on a framework document, but it did not work because he had asked fair questions. How much does it cost? How do we pay for it? Why did you kill the Amazon deal? How do you reconcile your luxury lifestyle with your working-class brand? All reasonable questions, all questions she could not answer. The New York Times ran the headline, Ocasio-Cortez struggles to defend Green New Deal economics in Senate hearing. The Washington Post, Kennedy presses Ocasio-Cortez on cost of climate proposals. Even Vox, generally friendly to progressives, admitted AOC couldn't answer basic questions about the Green New Deal, and that's a problem. By the next day, the political damage was severe. Democratic co-sponsors of the Green New Deal started backing away. I support ambitious climate action, but we need realistic cost estimates. The principles are important, but implementation requires careful analysis. Translation: Kennedy made it toxic to support this without serious economic analysis. Republican campaigns immediately cut ads using the clips. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wants to spend $93 trillion. She can't explain how to pay for it. Is this the future Democrats want? AOC tried to fight back, going on friendly media to defend herself, but every interviewer asked Kennedy's questions. How much does the Green New Deal cost? Do you have a funding plan? Can you respond to the economic criticisms? She gave the same non-answers, talked about moral urgency, about Republican obstruction, about the need for bold action. None of it worked, because Kennedy had framed the debate around basic competence. Can you do math? Can you explain your own plan? Can you defend your record? And she could not. Within a month, her favorability rating had dropped 12 points, not just among Republicans, but among independents and even some Democrats who watched the hearing and thought she could not answer basic questions. The Green New Deal, which had been gaining momentum as a progressive rallying cry, stalled completely. Even Democrats running for office would distance themselves from the specific proposal. We need climate legislation, but it needs to be economically sound. Kennedy had killed it with questions. 6 months later, he was asked about the hearing on Fox News. Senator Kennedy, that hearing with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez went viral. What was your strategy? Kennedy smiled, his slow Louisiana smile. Wasn't much strategy. I just asked her to explain her own plan. Turns out she couldn't. Not because I'm smart, but because her plan doesn't make sense. Do you think she is unintelligent? No. I think she is very intelligent. Smart as a whip, good communicator. But I think she has proposed things without thinking through the details. And when someone asks about the details, she doesn't have answers. What should she have done differently? Actually, worked out the math. If you are going to propose spending $93 trillion, you should know where it comes from. You should understand the economic impacts. You should be able to defend it when questioned. That is not unreasonable. That is basic governance. Would you debate her again? Kennedy laughed. Anytime she wants. I will ask the same questions, and I suspect I will get the same non-answers because the Green New Deal isn't serious policy. It is a slogan, and slogans don't survive scrutiny. A year after the hearing, AOC was still in Congress but diminished, still popular on social media, still able to generate headlines, but no longer taken seriously on economic policy. When she spoke on the House floor, Republicans would sometimes just read Kennedy's questions. How much does it cost? Where does the money come from? And Democrats would cringe because she still did not have answers. The Green New Deal became a punchline, a $93 trillion fantasy. Even Democrats running for office would distance themselves from it. I support climate action, but not the Green New Deal specifically. AOC had become a cautionary tale about proposing things you cannot defend, about confusing social media popularity with actual competence, about the difference between performance and governance. And John Kennedy, the folksy country lawyer from Louisiana, had done it all with questions. Simple questions, reasonable questions, questions that any competent policymaker should be able to answer. How much does it cost? Where does the money come from? Does the math work? AOC had proposed changing the entire American economy, and when a senator asked her to explain how, she could not. That wasn't Kennedy being mean. That was Kennedy doing his job, and AOC failing to do hers. 5 years later, in 2030, AOC was still representing her Bronx district, still making noise on social media, still beloved by progressive activists. But her legislative record was thin. No major bills passed, no committee chairmanships, no influence beyond her ability to generate headlines. She had become exactly what Kennedy had accused her of being, a performer, not a policymaker. The hearing was taught in political science classes as an example of the importance of knowing your subject matter. Students watched Kennedy systematically dismantle AOC's proposals just by asking her to explain them. The lesson wasn't about ideology. It was about competence. If you are going to propose major policy changes, You need to understand them deeply enough to defend them under scrutiny. AOC had failed that test live on C-SPAN in front of millions, and her political career never recovered from 90 minutes of simple questions she could not answer. That was the real legacy of the Green New Deal.